why reading is so important. Mia felt a knot tighten in her stomach whenever she imagined speaking English. Despite her aspirations, the words simply wouldn't come, often jumbling into an incoherent mess. This lack of confidence was a significant barrier, preventing her from engaging in conversations and truly utilizing her growing knowledge. She dreamed of fluency, but felt perpetually stuck. She had tried countless methods to improve, from endless grammar exercises to rote memorization of vocabulary lists. Yet, the progress seemed painfully slow, and the joy of learning was often overshadowed by frustration. The spoken word remained an elusive, intimidating challenge, constantly reminding her of perceived shortcomings. Her enthusiasm began to wane. One quiet afternoon, browsing an old bookstore, Mia stumbled upon a worn copy of an English children's story. Its simple illustrations and straightforward language surprisingly piqued her curiosity. She bought it on a whim, thinking perhaps a less intimidating approach was exactly what she needed right then. It felt like a small, hopeful step. Back home, she began to read. Each word, each sentence, felt like a small victory. The vivid descriptions transported her to another world, momentarily forgetting her anxieties about language acquisition. This experience was different. It wasn't a chore, but an enjoyable escape. The simple narrative held her attention completely. This initial encounter sparked a revelation. Mia realized that reading English stories wasn't just about vocabulary. It was about understanding context, sentence structure, and natural phrasing. It taught her how words connected, how ideas flowed, offering insights far beyond dictionary definitions. This holistic approach felt incredibly intuitive and effective. She started frequenting the library, devouring more children's books, then gradually progressing to young adult fiction. The sheer volume of exposure to natural English began to shape her internal understanding of the language. Each story broadened her horizons, making the learning process feel organic and surprisingly effortless. Her passion reignited. Mia discovered that through consistent reading, new words stopped being isolated entities. Instead, they became part of a larger tapestry of meaning, their nuances clarified by the surrounding text. This method of learning words was far more effective than flashcards alone, embedding vocabulary deeper into her long-term memory. It was revolutionary. The stories also provided her with ready-made phrases and idiomatic expressions that felt natural, not forced. She started noticing how native speakers structured their sentences, how they conveyed emotion, and the rhythm of their speech. This subtle immersion was incredibly powerful for her nascent speaking abilities. It enriched her linguistic palette. To amplify her learning, Mia decided to combine reading with listening. She found audio versions of some of her favorite English stories, playing them as she followed along in the book. This dual approach sharpened her pronunciation and improved her listening comprehension skills dramatically, linking the written word to its spoken form. Listening to English podcasts and watching English shows with subtitles became part of her daily routine. She focused on active listening, trying to catch intonation, stress, and natural pauses. This constant auditory input trained her ear, making conversations less intimidating and more understandable. Her perception of spoken English evolved. Slowly but surely, a shift began to occur. The words that had once felt so alien started to feel familiar, even friendly. Mia noticed herself understanding more nuanced conversations, picking up on jokes and subtle cultural references. Her comprehension soared, laying a solid foundation for her ultimate goal, confident speaking. The next challenge was bridging the gap from understanding to producing. Mia knew she needed to practice speaking, even if her voice trembled. She started by talking to herself in front of a mirror, describing her day or narrating mundane activities. This private practice built initial comfort. She would often reread sentences from her stories aloud, mimicking the intonation and rhythm she heard in audiobooks. This vocal exercise helped her articulate sounds more clearly and naturally. It was a conscious effort to move her mouth and tongue in unfamiliar ways, gradually building muscle memory for English. Mia then joined an online English conversation group. Her first few sessions were agonizingly slow, filled with long pauses and hesitant stammering. Her heart pounded, and her face flushed with embarrassment. Yet, she persevered, remembering the joy she found in her stories. She wouldn't give up easily. She discovered that making mistakes was an inevitable part of the learning process, not a sign of failure. The other learners were supportive, and the native speakers patiently corrected her, often encouraging her to try again. This supportive environment gradually chipped away at her fear of judgment. It was liberating. One powerful technique Mia adopted was focusing on chunks of language rather than individual words. Instead of trying to translate word for word, she learned common phrases like, "How are you doing?" or "It's a pleasure to meet you." This made her speech sound more natural and fluent. She also started keeping a language journal, not just for new words, but for entire sentences and expressions she liked. When she heard a native speaker use a particularly elegant or effective phrase, she would jot it down, intending to incorporate it into her own speech. This active engagement boosted her retention. Remembering words became less of a struggle. By encountering them repeatedly in various stories and contexts, their meanings solidified. She also made a point of using newly learned words in her private practice or in conversation, even if awkwardly at first. Active usage was key to retention. Mia understood that consistent exposure was paramount. She tried to immerse herself in English as much as possible, turning daily activities into language learning opportunities. From changing her phone settings to English to listening to English music, she built an ecosystem of immersion around herself. It felt natural. The best way to learn English, she realized, wasn't a single magical formula, but a blend of consistent, enjoyable activities. Reading provided the input, listening refined her ear, and speaking, however imperfectly, cemented her understanding and built confidence. It was a virtuous cycle, each component strengthening the others. As weeks turned into months, Mia's progress became undeniable. Her pauses shortened, her vocabulary expanded, and her sentences flowed more smoothly. She found herself expressing complex ideas with increasing clarity, no longer struggling for basic words. The transformation was truly remarkable, almost magical in its speed. Her confidence grew with each successful conversation. The fear that once paralyzed her slowly dissipated, replaced by a genuine eagerness to communicate. She no longer worried about making mistakes. Instead, she viewed them as learning opportunities, stepping stones towards greater fluency. This mental shift was crucial. Mia even started to tell her own stories in English, simple narratives about her day or funny anecdotes. This creative output was a testament to her newfound comfort with the language. It demonstrated that she wasn't just consuming English but actively producing it, a true sign of mastery. She began to recommend her methods to friends struggling with English. Read stories, she'd advise. Listen to native speakers. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. The journey is as important as the destination. Her passion for English became infectious, inspiring others around her. The simple act of opening that first English storybook had set her on an unexpected path. It wasn't about rigid rules or perfect grammar at the beginning, but about connecting with the language on a deeper, more emotional level. That connection made all the difference in her learning. Mia often reflected on her initial anxieties. She remembered the nights spent staring at vocabulary lists, feeling overwhelmed by the sheer volume of words. Now, words flowed more naturally, picked up organically from the engaging narratives she consumed daily. Her memory retention significantly improved. The key, she realized, was consistent exposure in a non-stressful environment. English stories provided that perfect blend of entertainment and education. They made the formidable task of language acquisition feel like a delightful adventure, not an academic chore. This enjoyment was the real secret. She advocated for reading material that genuinely interested the learner, regardless of its perceived difficulty level. Starting with simple texts and gradually increasing complexity kept motivation high and prevented burnout. Finding joy in the process was paramount for long-term success. It made learning sustainable. For speaking confidence, Mia discovered that small, consistent steps were more effective than grand, infrequent attempts. Daily micro-conversations, even with herself, built momentum. The cumulative effect of these tiny practices was far greater than occasional, high-pressure interactions. Consistency was truly empowering for her. Listening to diverse English accents also played a vital role in her comprehensive understanding. She made an effort to listen to speakers from different countries, recognizing that English is a global language with many valid forms. This broadened her auditory comprehension immensely, preparing her for real-world interactions. Mia understood that English was not just a collection of rules, but a living, breathing entity. Stories brought this vitality to life, showing her how language was used naturally to convey emotions, ideas, and culture. This holistic understanding was invaluable for true fluency and communication. The transformation wasn't just linguistic, it was personal. As her English improved, so did her overall self-esteem. She became more outgoing, more willing to take risks, and more open to new experiences. The language journey had unexpectedly shaped her personality for the better. She no longer feared making grammatical errors or mispronouncing words. The goal shifted from perfection to effective communication. This liberation from self-imposed pressure allowed her to speak more freely and express herself authentically. Authenticity became her new benchmark for success. Mia's story serves as a powerful testament to the importance of reading for language learning. It provides the necessary input, expands vocabulary naturally, and familiarizes learners with authentic sentence structures. Reading lays the groundwork for all other language skills. It is foundational. The synergy between reading and listening was particularly potent for her. Hearing the words she read and reading the words she heard reinforced learning pathways in her brain. This multisensory approach solidified her grasp of both receptive and productive skills, creating a strong linguistic bridge. For learning words, Mia found that actively using them in context rather than merely recognizing them, was crucial. She created mental images or short scenarios for new vocabulary, making them more memorable. This active recall practice embedded new terms deeper into her memory. She also experimented with spaced repetition techniques for particularly challenging words, but always alongside contextual usage. This combination ensured both memorization and understanding. Rote learning alone was inefficient. Meaningful engagement with words was the true pathway to retention and mastery. Mia emphasized that the journey to fluent English is unique for everyone, but certain principles remain universal. Consistency, enjoyment, and active engagement are the pillars upon which true language mastery is built. Her personal transformation was a powerful example of this truth. Her advice for how to talk in English boiled down to two things: speak often and speak without fear. Find opportunities, no matter how small, to engage. Whether with a tutor, a language exchange partner, or even just narrating your thoughts aloud. She learned that fluency isn't about speaking fast, but about speaking clearly and confidently. It's about being able to convey your message effectively, even if you need a moment to gather your thoughts. Pauses are natural. Clarity is the ultimate goal. The initial struggle with English felt like an insurmountable mountain. Now, looking back, Mia realized that the path was paved with countless small, enjoyable steps. Each story read, each podcast listened to, each hesitant word spoken contributed to her ascent. Mia often described reading as fuel for her English engine. Without consistent input, her speaking and listening skills would never have developed with such speed and naturalness. It provided the raw material her brain needed to build fluency. She recognized that confidence in speaking wasn't an inherent trait, but a skill developed through consistent practice and positive reinforcement. Every time she successfully communicated an idea, however simple, her confidence received a vital boost. It was a self-perpetuating cycle. The best way to learn English, in Mia's experience, was not a singular method but an integrated approach. It involved immersing oneself in the language through enjoyable activities, rather than treating it as a dry academic subject. Fun accelerated her learning journey. English story reading provided a non-threatening environment for exploration. Unlike a demanding textbook, a story invited her in, allowing her to learn at her own pace, absorbing the language without pressure. This gentle introduction was foundational to her progress. She advocated for learners to find their own English stories, whether they were fictional narratives, nonfiction articles, or even engaging social media content. The key was to find something captivating enough to sustain interest and consistent engagement over time. To learn words effectively, Mia suggested creating personal connections to them. Instead of just memorizing definitions, associate words with images, feelings, or real-life situations. This deep processing made recall much easier and more intuitive, embedding them firmly. Remembering words was also about active retrieval. Instead of passively reviewing lists, Mia would test herself, trying to recall words without looking. This active effort strengthened the neural pathways associated with those words, improving long-term retention significantly. Mia's transformation from a hesitant learner to a confident speaker was a testament to the power of self-directed, enjoyable learning. She took ownership of her language journey, tailoring it to her interests and needs, ultimately achieving remarkable fluency and confidence. Her advice to anyone struggling was simple: start small, be consistent, and find joy in the process. The path to English fluency is not a sprint, but a marathon, best enjoyed with good stories and a willingness to embrace imperfection. She often shared her favorite English stories, emphasizing how they had not only taught her language, but also introduced her to new cultures and perspectives. Reading became a window to the world, enriching her life far beyond just linguistic skills. The journey of learning English became an analogy for life itself, full of challenges, breakthroughs, and continuous growth. Mia learned that perseverance and a positive attitude were just as important as any specific learning technique. They fueled her forward. How to talk in English ultimately boiled down to embracing imperfection and focusing on communication. The goal was to connect with others, not to deliver a flawless performance. This mindset shift dramatically reduced her anxiety and unlocked her voice. Mia now confidently engages in conversations, presents ideas, and even helps other learners. Her success story is a powerful reminder that with the right approach and consistent effort, anyone can achieve fluency and unlock their full potential in English. So, pick up that English story, tune into that podcast, and start speaking, even if it's just a whisper. Your voice, like Mia's, is waiting to be discovered, confident and clear, ready to share your own unique story with the world.